Good morning. Welcome to NBA Betting Show. Back from a one-day hiatus. Mike Lockey's back and joining us. Back from a little disappointment in the Morocco-France game. Matt Mosman is joining us. And I'm Mike G. I'm joining us wondering why the MVP trophy was named for Michael Jordan instead of Jose Alvarado, sorry. I'm so worked up about it, I can't even get his name right. Matt, we're going to jump straight to that New Orleans game today. We've got a lot of value showing on Utah. Let's talk about what the recommendation is and why.
Yeah, the best player on the Pelicans maybe is not playing tonight.
Right.
It's
Wait,
like
is that
really
Brandon
hard to
Ingram?
say that with a straight
Is
face.
that Brandon Ingram?
Yeah.
No. Is that Zion? No. It's
CJ McCollum? No.
Those guys are playing well, except for Ingram. But yeah, Jose Alvarado's out. I
right.
think we do need to show like what the ratings have here. Well, first of all, I have a manual bump on New Orleans, which I did not have the other night. The reason I'm giving it mostly is because we talked about the phenomenon of two teams playing each other consecutively and the losing team being able to adjust a bit. So I'm accounting for that. That's why I have this here.
Okay.
But to
Right,
scroll,
so even with giving
Yep.
New Orleans a manual bump, we're still showing 3.5 points of value.
Yep.
If you go back to the value tab there.
Well, I want to show this first. This is
yeah. Let's look at the ratings. So you guys, if you've listened to the show, you've heard us sing the praises of the best player on the Pelicans. Let's look at these 538 ratings and talk about just how the impact he has on the game. Even though his minutes aren't starters' minutes, but he has a pretty big impact, mainly from the defensive side, but also still solid offensively. Just give us a quick walkthrough of these 538 ratings.
all right. I'm trying to find a better version of this. I have another tab where I can show this and probably display it more clearly.
It is not fitting very well.
All right, stand by. I think in 3 seconds I will have this. Okay, here we go. Yeah, this one is better. Okay, as you can see, Zion is good for sure with a 3.1 net rating, but Jose Alvarado is down there with a 4 net rating. And
Wow.
538 is not perfect. We don't take literally everything they say as like this is the final word on every player, which is why over the course of a season we will give manual adjustments to teams where maybe we just don't agree with their ratings. In this case, like I think there is a lot of justification for why Jose Alvarado is good. I mean, when he's had to step up for players that are out, he's done really well. And then there are just things that 538 accounts for that don't show up in your standard box score.
Turnovers, etc.
Yeah, like not turning it over. It doesn't even look like anything if you watch the game. Just like the secondary assist, which is why Jokic is the best rated player in the NBA, is because there is no statistic for the hockey assist. And
Right.
clearly, I mean, Jokic gets assists that like he could get credit for sometimes that he doesn't, where just the fact that he's even standing there, like his gravity creates an assist. And Curry has that effect. There are a few other players that have that effect. So I'm not comparing Jose Alvarado to those guys, but there is something in his game that is being weighed very heavily. His defense is most of it, and we all know he's a really good defender, so that part is not surprising. But on offense, he does rate well too, and I think part of it is just he's not messing up. He is probably a pretty good passer and a decent shooter. And overall, he's not screwing up. So
This is one of those situations that I'm excited to see it unfold, correct? Because I think it plays out a couple of ways. He either becomes like an all-star next year or the season after, or his rating will kind of regress to what a larger sample size will give us. And I think it's pretty exciting one way or another because I think, there's no reason that this all-star isn't on the table. And I don't know, I like being ahead on guys as they're emerging. It's like a pretty fun thing to watch.
I'm going to jump in. I don't think he's ever going to be an all-star. I think he's a guy that every contending team wants. He's a guy that gives solid minutes. He's a guy that we love because of the value that we see. Thank you, 538, that the market doesn't. But I don't see him ever being an all-star. I just see him being a very solid backup, potentially being able to step in as a starter when needed. But anyway, as Matt mentioned, he gave New Orleans a manual bump. Even with that, we're still showing 3.5 points of value. So if you can get that Utah plus 1.5, grab it. and watch the game. And who gets the minutes for the Pelicans? Because part of the impact here is not just they're missing Alvarado. It's now instead of playing their backup point guard who sometimes plays crunch time, now they're going to the second backup. So Graham's good. Is he the one that's going to get the minutes?
Not really, actually. So two things. The players who are like Alvarado, who like the people around the league now know as really good players, would be Alex Caruso and Derek White, where like they're well regarded now. 538 was probably very far ahead of public sentiment on those guys. So could Alvarado be in the category of those two players? I think for sure.
Yeah.
And maybe Emmanuel Quickly is the next guy after that. And then as far as who plays tonight, Devontae Graham is the next guy in line, but the Pelicans have really, really leaned on Dyson Daniels and Najee Marshall a lot lately, and those guys don't rate that well. Daniels is a negative 0.9, Marshall's a negative 0.3. They're both young players. Daniels, I think, is a rookie, and like both of the Daniels in particular, his rating has improved because he's been playing well, and this seems to be the guy that they like a lot to. I don't know, like be a primary on-ball defender when Alvarado is great at that, but Daniels is longer. And I think when Herb Jones was out, he was filling more of that role, but they just kind of like him. So they're just playing him a lot. In the minutes projections, we're still like Stochastic still is Graham at less than 20 minutes tonight. And Graham rates better than both of the guys I just mentioned. So there is a bit of like the Pelicans are not playing the best version of their team. It's not as bad as Doc Rivers or Tom Thibodeau, but they are not playing an optimal rotation because they have, Alvarado wasn't even playing a ton when he was healthy. So they're not playing Graham probably as much as they should. And yeah, like Daniels and Marshall are fine, but the team is suffering a bit. So it's not as extreme as like Alvarado has terrible backups or anything, but he's got mediocre backups.
Got it. All right. This one's pretty
simple. This team is growing on me. I just want to say that.
The Pelicans or the Jazz?
The Pelicans.
Yeah.
Like it's more than Alvarado. Like I am also like a bigger Herb Jones guy. And there's just something about like guys that can contribute massively on defense and just not make mistakes can allow your other players to flourish. And obviously Zion has all the offensive talent in the world. His defense is, yet to be determined if it can be, above average. But this team's definitely growing on me. I'm not a big Ingram guy, but I like McCollum. I like Zion. I was poo-pooing the idea of them being a real contender in the West, but I'm changing my tune a little bit.
Well, I'm not even disagreeing with that at all, actually, because if we go back to the other tab here, even without Alvarado, New Orleans actually rates pretty well. Like 3.1 is a pretty good team rating. That would put them in the top 10 in the NBA, maybe borderline top 10. And this is the version of them that is missing Alvarado and Ingram. When those guys are healthy, they're like borderline top 5. They're actually very good. But maybe more relevant here is just how good Utah is. Like, the Jazz have been playing not the best version of their rotation. Part of that was because Conley was out, but they have been giving a lot of minutes to Colin Sexton throughout the year, and him being injured is definitely an addition by subtraction. And Taylor Horton-Tucker, they've started playing less too. Those are the two worst rotation players on the team, Sexton and Horton-Tucker. So that's partly why Conley being back is such a big deal. But now we're seeing a bit more minutes from Nickeil Alexander-Walker. We're seeing Rudy Gay play more. And I still don't understand why Rudy Gay didn't get minutes in the playoffs last year. Like, they needed him more than they needed anything in last year's playoff series against Dallas in particular. But Rudy Gay is playing again. He was injured too. And now we're getting these big minutes from Walker Kessler, who is like up there for one of the best players on this team. He has a 1.3 player rating. I think if you watch him,
he broke the slate the other night on FanDuel.
He had like 16 rebounds.
Near it, but
he had 16 rebounds in the last game.
Yeah,
and I think a few
he
blocks
plays off the
too.
bench, right?
Yeah, he's coming off the bench for now. If Kelly Olynyk gets traded, he will start the rest of the season. But right. I wouldn't be surprised if they start putting him in the starting lineup anyway. Like he's
over
a great.
Olynyk?
Probably over Vanderbilt. Maybe they can play Olynyk, Markkanen, and Kessler together. Actually, it could be.
I don't know how those bigs work out exactly. But
me either, but
like
there's enough versatility in the games of Markkanen and Olynyk that they might try it. But yeah, maybe Olynyk just ends up getting traded, and Kessler is the guy It's part of the reason why I don't think the Jazz can really tank is because trading Olynyk and playing Kessler barely hurts the team. Kessler might be better than Olynyk, or at least they're close to each other.
Yeah, and then same thing with just drew a blank, the guy we just said addition by subtraction, Sexton.
Yeah,
Sexton potentially could be a trade target for a team that needs like a heat check instant offense guy. So they potentially pick up yet another asset if they move him and make the team better in the short term. So it's kind of a classic Danny Ainge thing to do if he can. So
yeah, Nickeil Alexander-Walker may be better than Colin Sexton, and it's possible that Ainge is just he's been playing Sexton bigger minutes or getting Will Hardy to play him bigger minutes so that they can then trade him, and then Alexander-Walker is better anyway.
Yep. No, absolutely. All right, let's go back to the value tab. So this one is, if you watch this show, we talk a lot about potential injuries, guys that are on the Q tag list. You see there's nobody on either team that's right now questionable. Of course, that can change.
Yeah.
So this one's pretty straightforward, guys. Grab Utah plus the 1.5. You get 3.5 points of value, possibly even more if we didn't have that manual adjustment that gave a bump to New Orleans. Let's move on since that's a pretty straightforward one. You want to talk about possible value in that Phoenix game, or where do you want to move to? Okay.
Yeah, we'll come back to Miami. Like, even with two major players on the injury report, there probably isn't really a bet there. But for Phoenix, we have 4 players who are uncertain. And I'm like, we had this night with Atlanta Memphis where we spent the whole day like timing news, or at least I did. You guys probably spent way more than you normally do. I don't know if it was as much time as I did, but it was a lot. It was a lot of time for all of us.
It was a lot of focus effort.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, for sure. So I don't think this will be as bad as that. But like, I'm preparing mentally to just be exhausted all day trying to like figure out what's going on with this Phoenix LA game. And I do want to come back to this for future betting purposes because this is now a really important game in the division, especially with what happened to Steph Curry last night. Yep. But for tonight's game specifically, Kawhi is projected out already. And they basically said the other day that he wasn't going to play the second leg of the back-to-back. Like, there's almost no chance Kawhi Leonard plays tonight. We're going to get him ruled out at some point. So we almost don't have to worry about him. If he were to play, it would probably add 2 points back to the Clippers. So we have the projected line around Pick'em. Projected line would go to Clippers -2 or so if Kawhi got upgraded. But really don't think that's going to happen. So after him, we have Zubac, and we have Booker, and we have Ayton. The situation I want for this game is for Ayton not to play and for us to still bet on Phoenix. Because DeAndre Ayton now has a player rating of -1.3.
How does that compare to Bismack Biyombo?
Biyombo's terrible. He's way worse.
Okay.
But the thing that could be interesting, and it could put some total bets in play, is Zubac has a negative rating also.
I was just thinking Zubac and 8 now. I'm interested in the over.
Yep.
Like, I don't know what the line is, and I don't feel very confident in game totals, but those are 2 guys that are really going to change the way this game is played, I think.
Yes. So the thing that we should have talked about more from Hawks Grizzlies, which we are going to talk about now because now we remember, we're not forgetting this ever again, is if the center on both teams doesn't play, there is a
double center Q tags is fun.
Yeah, because then there's a compounding effect of they don't need to match up. Like if just Ayton were out, Biyombo is going to go head-to-head with Zubac. If just Zubac were out, they might have Moses Brown go head-to-head with Ayton. But if both guys don't play, we could see center minutes from Nick Batum and Dario Saric. Like then neither team has to play center. So there definitely is that possibility here. I'm going to say Zubac and Ayton are both closer to doubtful. Like for Zubac, it's a back-to-back anyway, and he left the game with a knee injury and was out for the game. And I think it was the third quarter. He hurt his knee and missed the rest of the game.
All right, so let's talk about what to actually do here. Let's say in our 14 tree if then statement.
Oh yeah, always 14.
Right, yeah. If Zubac and Ayton are out, and let's say Booker's in.
We have so yes, Booker is still the most important player here.
Mm-hmm. Right, so let's say Booker's in and Ayton, Zubac are out. What's the action?
This is like I don't even know how. Okay, Booker in, Ayton, Zubac out. I don't. The timing of it is why it's hard to answer this question, but I think if that happened, we would
Let's assume we
have
get the Suns news first, and you get both Booker and Aiton at the same time, and you still have Zubac's question. I think that is
right because we can assume he's probably doubtful, so we'll just take that and go. With
yeah.
it.
I think there's more assumptions that are fair to make on the Clippers side. So I think the most actionable stuff is going to come from the Phoenix side.
Yeah.
So let's pretend we get the Phoenix news first, and it comes together.
That's a good way to say it. So, and we probably will have a Suns shoot around, so we probably will get that. Booker in, Ayton out. I think the line probably won't, the spread probably won't change much. And we're going to have a slight projected edge on Phoenix because Ayton is still going to drop the Phoenix spread. So right now we have, I got to scroll back. We have Phoenix minus 0.3. Our projected line probably goes to like 0, just flat 0 for the game, which would give us a tiny edge on the Suns. I don't even know if there's any +2s available anymore. So at +1.5, like it's not even a bet. So we're really focused on the total then. If we
I'm seeing some different totals around 217.5.
Looks like most of the market is 217.5, maybe 218.
Okay, I'm seeing 218.
And the opening total was around here, but the thing is, the current total is pricing in Booker questionable. Like, it's already come down a bit. So, okay, I have the opening total now. 220 at DraftKings, 219.5 at FanDuel. So they've already dropped the total a bit. I think if Booker plays, the total goes back up to it goes up to like 220, 221. But then if you get both the centers are out, it could be like 225, depending on starting lineups. Like, I don't know how much it'll move, but we're looking at like a 2-unit bet.
225 might, if all three are out, like all four, including Kawhi, if it's true, like all out, I think 225 is low.
You think it could be higher?
I think it'll. Yeah, I think they'll post a higher line. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think it'll get to 227 or 228.
I don't think it'll move that much, but I think you could argue that it should.
Fair. That's okay. Completely fair.
Yeah, like we could have a projected total, which we don't do, but we're kind of guessing here. But I think we have pretty good
backup centers for the Clippers again.
So it's Moses Brown and Bismack Biyombo, but
Brown.
If it's that situation, neither of them really has to play.
Has Moses Brown put on any weight?
I don't think so.
Every time I've looked at him on a basketball court, I feel like he just gets moved by anyone.
Yeah, but Bismack Biyombo is someone he can actually play against because there's no offensive game there. We probably, if Ayton and Zubac are both out, those two guys are going to play some. They may not start, but they're going to be on the court, 10 to 15 minutes each probably, maybe 20. But there's going to be a huge amount of the game where we have small ball.
Mm-hmm.
And Kawhi's defense not being there is already a detriment.
Small ball should be very profitable.
Yeah, I mean, I especially now that Sarge is back, you made a point about then, if Ayton's out, Sarge could play the majority of this game at center, and then you got, it's just a wide open game.
Yeah, it's going to be Sarge and Jock Landale as the small ball centers. That's who they'd have. Yeah.
So, all right. I think the starting lineups could be really interesting here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because
I think.
But when Booker gets upgraded, when Booker gets upgraded, though, you're going to want some on the over because it's going to go up.
I agree with that.
Like, even if all we got is just Booker plays compared to nothing, like, let's say everyone played.
At 217.5, Booker in, I'm extremely interested in the over.
Right. I don't think it's a huge bet, but we probably get it into the low 220s if just Booker is up.
Yeah, I think there is still some clear risk with the centers playing, but I agree with your point. I think it's fair to shade them towards less than likely playing. And in those examples, I think Booker's the real wild card. Obviously, Booker should have a pretty big impact on the total himself. I'd like to see the starting lineup for Phoenix and the Booker news as probably the 2 points where I'm getting action.
Gotcha. So now, assuming we get the Phoenix news at the same time, so let's say we get Booker in, DeAndre Ayton out. Are you going full unit on the over if you can get it at the 219?
I think so.
Or is it still not?
Yeah. Okay. If I can get 217.5, I'd go full unit over if we get Booker in, Ayton out. Yeah.
Got it. Okay.
So then we should do like what are the other possibilities for these two players? If Booker and Ayton are both in, we're going to have some value on the Suns because the Clippers are also going to look a bit worse when Zubac gets ruled out. I think we could have like a half unit to a unit bet on Phoenix if they're healthy and the Clippers are not. So if we
Got
get
it.
both guys upgraded, I probably will bet a little bit on the over and a little bit on the Suns, like half unit each. If both Phoenix guys are upgraded.
Looking at the sheet here, so
Yep.
you said if Booker and Ayton are in,
Yep.
Zubats is out.
Yep.
Doesn't that give us like 2.8 points of value?
There's no +2s anymore. That's why it looks like that, but
Okay.
there's no more +2 around the market. Yeah, just they moved at, I don't know, maybe it was right before the show. I think DraftKings was the only site that had +2, and now they don't.
Okay.
So that's why it would only be 2.3, because it's off of +1.5.
I was looking at it thinking it was 2.8 and thinking that's pretty solid, but
Yeah.
2.3.
So a little worse.
was-
I mean, if you can get like +110 or higher on the money line, for that I'd do a full unit, but I don't think that's available right now.
Gotcha.
Um,
Okay.
And then, okay, so then we have if both Booker and Ayton are ruled out, because that could happen too. My hunch here is that won't, and if it did, I think Booker at least
Campaign
is,
already got ruled out too, right?
campaign is already out. So, okay, so yeah, I actually,
This team gets really thin really quick, right?
yeah, Booker may be worth more, and there may be an adjustment coming here. Oh, nice. We've
Right.
got
Yeah,
edit going
I'm
on the
just
screen.
updating. I'm updating for latest odds.
Okay.
While you're chatting, just so we get it's updating now.
I may need to redo this Devin Booker estimate number because it may be a bit higher because campaign is already out. So normally if Booker or Paul doesn't play, campaign is going to play a lot of minutes, but he's already out. So if Booker gets rolled out now, it's a lot worse than normal. And I think the Suns have one other guy that I think Dwayne Washington actually rates okay, and he's out too. Yeah.
Yeah,
He doesn't rate he doesn't rate well, but he is out.
Chris Paul, other than Booker and Ayton, they got Chris Paul, Miles Bridges, Torrey Craig, Landry Shamet, Damian Lee, Jock Landale, Josh Okogie, Bismack Biyombo. This team stinks.
Josh Okogie actually is a really good defender, but there's not much offense happening there. So also, like, Booker getting rolled out is going to put a very, very defensive-oriented player in the game. Like, if we get
So that doesn't help the over.
if Ayton and Zubac play without Booker, the under is probably good.
Ayton and Zubac play without Booker.
But I don't think-
then
I don't think that's happening. That's
yeah, I
like
think
that's
that's pretty unlikely. But
because I think Booker is more likely to play than Ayton, and I think Zubac is doubtful. So that
Got it.
situation, we don't have to spend much time on it. But basically, the other situation that we do care about is if Booker is ruled out, the Clippers are going to look like a good bet at -1, or even 1.5. They'd be pretty decent, even without Zubac, even without Kawhi. If Booker isn't there because campaign is also not there, Booker being ruled out is going to move the line by like 3.5 to 4 points.
Got it.
So
Okay.
then we have like
All right.
2.5 points of value on the LA side if Booker doesn't play.
Got it. Okay. And this,
Yep.
as we're moving along here, we do have the most recent updated odds from Action
Okay.
Network as well. It's the most any minutes updates from Stochastic and if there are any player rating updates from 538. So this is
Cool.
latest and greatest as of about 30 seconds ago. All right, so let's move on to Miami, Houston.
Yes.
This one has value if things break a certain way. Why don't you
Yeah.
give us what should we be looking for here?
So we have value if things break a certain way, but I am very, very skeptical it's going to break that way. So I think this is a no bet because
Got it.
Bam is not playing tonight. Like, I would be absolutely shocked if Bam plays. There was in the
Okay.
post-game press conference last night, he basically was talking about how sore he was and like it's been hard for him or whatever. I forget the exact quotes, but Bam was very strongly hinting at not playing. And prior to yesterday's game, Spoelstra had said it was a little bit vague, but he basically said we're going to treat Thursday's game the same as Wednesday. And in Wednesday's game, they sat Butler. I think the best read of this that I can think of is that Butler sat Wednesday and other veterans are going to sit Thursday. So Bam is the one who specifically after the game talked about like being sore. And we know that like that's a pretty good indicator. They're also playing Houston. This is sure they can
Right.
still lose this game, but it's not a team they're competing for a spot in the standings with.
Is Butler in tonight?
We don't know for sure, but like all we have to go on is what Spoelstra said yesterday. But they've been very public about like Butler not playing back-to-backs. And he basically was out for rest yesterday. So
Got it.
I think there's a 95% chance Butler is playing. I think there's like a 10% chance Bam is playing. And I think there's
So-
like a 20% chance, maybe a bit higher. Lowry might be like a 33% chance. Lowry
Got
could
it.
play. I think he's probably out, but he might play. But if Bam gets
All right,
ruled
so-
out, we have nothing here.
Well, the one thing I would ask, let's say things break according to what you think, which is Bam out, Lowry in. I'm sorry, Bam and Lowry out, Butler in.
Yep.
This seems like a good spot for Butler props, doesn't it? It's gonna be Butler and a bunch of guys named Gabe Vincent and Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, I just don't know how much more usage Butler can have. Like,
agree
he's
with
such a dominant part of the offense in general, right? There are no
But
props for this team yet anyway.
Got it.
But
Okay.
like, sure, is Butler going to get like another half a rebound and another half of assist to his projection if Bam is out and Lowry is out? Yeah, probably. But like, Tyler Hero is going to shoot a ton. The rebounding is going to be, the other backup bigs, Dwayne Dedman, Caleb Martin. Like, I don't think there's enough there because Butler already does so much. He's not going to play more minutes either. Like, it's going to be the same playing time he would normally get.
Got it. Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
most likely a non-bet here, but we'll keep an eye. And
Yep.
again, if anybody's new to the show, Matt will give us updates on the Preaching Sense Twitter account. So if there's anything there throughout the day that things change or anything new pops up, he will let us know.
That
Anything else
but
for
yeah, that 5% though that Jimmy Butler doesn't play creates a massive, massive opportunity on Houston because
Okay.
Butler in this case is the only rested Miami player coming into this game. Everyone else played a really tough game against OKC last night, which OKC just plays a lot of close games against good teams. It's like their thing, I guess, this year. So
Thank goodness they weren't 6.5-point dogs last night on the road. 'Cause
Right, they were-
how big our eyes would have got there. And-
the Thunder
and how
played a
much
home
smaller
game,
back
which
against-
the Thunder played their first home game of the season last night. And yeah, so the Heat were up
Finally
big.
got
The
off
Thunder
their
came
40-game
back.
road trip.
Wait, say that again?
I said they finally got off their 40-game road trip.
Yeah. So the Heat had a big lead, but they let the Thunder back in the game, which meant that the starters had to play their normal minutes. So
Right.
because of that, because of that, we have the rest on the table, but they did win the game. They don't necessarily have to beat Houston. Like, they could give Butler another game off. They could. So if we get Butler ruled out, I'm assuming Bam is out no matter what. Like,
Okay.
Do you think the 14 and 15 eighth place Miami Heat are interested in coasting right now? The answer might be yes.
but what do you mean by coasting?
Like just sitting Butler extra games just because they or sitting like being overly cautious against the Rockets.
They could be. I don't think so, but they could be. Like, it's on the table. We don't really know what they're doing, but so I think Butler is almost certainly going to play, but if he doesn't play, I think the reason that he wouldn't play is because they don't value this game enough and they're going to, take it easy on their important players. So Butler playing probably correlates to Bam and Lowry also not playing. That's kind of what I'm getting at. And then we get a massive compounding effect because the Miami depth this year is not what it used to be.
Right.
And then we get a projected line, like if all those guys are out, including Oladipo. He's not going to play the back-to-back either, but he doesn't matter unless all those other guys are out first.
Right.
If you're missing a bunch of those players, you actually care about Oladipo. He's not going to play either. So then we have a projected line of like Houston -3
Is
or
Butler and
something.
Oladipo playing on the court together yet? Wasn't that a thing at some point where Butler wouldn't allow Oladipo to be on the court with them? Like
What? I don't know about that,
Like-
but maybe.
Are we breaking news? Do we have a scoop? I hadn't
No,
heard that.
I swear this was a thing either at the end of last year or early this year where Butler told Spoelstra that Oladipo can't be on the court with him. He just won't allow it. He's like, fuck that guy, I hate him, whatever. So maybe I'm making something up that isn't there, but I feel like that's a thing.
Yeah, it's news to me if it's a thing. I have no idea.
Hmm.
But I think either way, Butler's playing and Oladipo's not. So the theory is going to hold true for at least one more game.
Got it. Okay.
But if Butler does get ruled out, you can really, really heavily bet Houston. That's basically what I'm getting at. Like, the most actionable potential for this game is Jimmy Butler gets ruled out, and then we can probably expect that Bam and Lowry will also get ruled out. And then Houston is going to be projected -3, and we're getting them at +4. So that's on the off chance that Jimmy Butler doesn't play. But if Butler is playing, then we don't really have anything.
Got it. Cool. All right. I think that's it for tonight.
Yep.
Do we want to shift to talking about some recaps from anything interesting that happened yesterday?
Yeah.
We want to talk about that, especially since it has impact on futures bets. We want to talk about the Indianapolis Golden State game.
Yeah, and
Where
then
do you want to start?
yeah, I think we'll talk about that, and then we can combine it with what's going on with the Pacific Division right now. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this game ended up being very annoying just because of like having to wait all day. Results wise, it was fine. Like we were talking about how the Pacers were a good bet, even if the Warriors rested nobody. They rested Clay,
Right.
but that was expected. And then the Pacers won anyway, even though Curry got like upgraded or downgraded, then upgraded, then got hurt in the game. There was a whole bunch of Steph Curry nonsense, but
Was shooting wild also, like completely carrying the team.
yeah, I mean, if he doesn't get hurt, do the Pacers still win? I don't know. They were up 20 at halftime, even with Curry doing that. Very
But
strange game.
It was all third quarter. Everything like they made it a 3-point game in the third quarter.
Wow. And it was a 20-point game at the half, right?
It was a 20-point game at halftime. It was actually I think it was 81-80 at one point, and then the Pacers went on a run to make it like 91-80.
And that's around when Curry left the game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know how much credit we deserve or whatever, but the Pacers were projected to be small favorites. They were winning by 20 at halftime. All of that happened. They still won. But Curry left the game with an injury, and that's really like the thing we care about now because we can pat ourselves on the back as much as we want. But going forward, like this Steph Curry shoulder injury that he got, left shoulder, so maybe not as significant, but reaching for a loose ball, still going to keep him out for at least a couple games. We now have interesting scenarios in the Pacific Division where the Clippers and the Kings have kind of been steady all year since like the first 2 weeks, but the Clippers have been on the rise the last couple games. They've had a couple wins. They beat Boston and they beat Minnesota. And those are two. I mean, Boston game was a pretty impressive win for them. But Phoenix and Golden State have been moving backwards pretty dramatically. The Suns have lost 2 games to the Rockets in the last week and a half. They lost 2 in a row to New Orleans. I think they were 16 at. They were like 14-7 at one point. They're 16-12 now. So we have a Phoenix LA game tonight where the division is like potentially very heavily impacted by what goes on in this game. And I'm just going to pull up the division odds right now. Here we go. Okay. If the Clippers win tonight, I'm probably making bets on both LA and Sacramento to win the division. The Sacramento one just like I don't want to. I really don't want to.
I'm seeing a 10-1 as my first line for Sacramento, and I don't love that one, but really I'm seeing a plus 500 for the Clippers, and that I'm pretty interested in.
If they win, if they lose this game though, it's a home game against a division opponent. That sets them back like a game and a half in the projected standings from the Suns moving up and them moving down. And it's a game that the Clippers probably are supposed to win. So division odds are different from the playoff odds. These won't move at most sites before the game or during the game. You can get division bets in at this stage of the year, maybe different after the new year. Like the later in the season it gets, the more books are going to pull the division odds during games. But in December, you don't have to bet this before this game starts. Like, if you have multiple books, one of them will have division odds up during the game. FanDuel probably will have it.
If the Clips win, what bet are you like? What's the price? What's the strike point?
I think 500 is fine. So okay, like rough estimate of probabilities to win the division here. If for each team winning tonight, I think we can do that. The Lakers are less than 1% either way. So we have it's a 4-team race in the Pacific Division. I think if the Suns win, the Suns are probably around 60 to 65%, with the Warriors, Clippers, and Kings all being around the same as each other.
Okay.
Maybe the Kings a little bit lower. So maybe we get 65 for Phoenix, 15 each or like 14 each or something for the Clippers and the Warriors, and then like 5 to 7% for Sacramento. Okay. If Phoenix wins. So in that scenario, there isn't really a bet. Like the market is mostly priced for that. But there are sites out there, I've seen a couple today, where the Suns are a much shorter number than this. So if the Suns win and you can get them at like minus 140, like then that's worth doing. I don't want to spend this entire segment like digging around for every book, but if Phoenix wins and you can get them like minus 150 or less, that's really good if they win. At minus 210 here on FanDuel, I'm staying away though.
Yeah, it's even worse on Bet Rivers. All right, so
Okay.
now let's go through the scenarios if the Clips win tonight.
Okay, if the Clippers win tonight, I think the Suns' division probability drops to like 50%. And then we have the Clippers
One game really has that big an impact? That seems crazy to me.
Well, I think they're like 56, 57% right now, and they can go up 7 or 8% or down 7 or 8%. Yeah, I think it has that much of an impact.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot to me for a single game of an NBA season, even against the division matchup.
I mean, like the Knicks last night, for example, went from 56% to 63% to make the playoffs on 538. Like 7% one way or the other at this stage, I think is reasonable for
in key matchups.
In key matchups, yeah. If it's like the Kings' probability to make the playoffs, even though they won in Toronto last night, which is a really big win, didn't go up by as much because they beat a team that is irrelevant to them in the standings.
Right.
They went up like 3 or 4%. It was a win that they weren't expected to get, but because it wasn't against a team they're competing with, it doesn't change as much. But these are teams facing each other.
That much. I'm not disagreeing completely, but
the odds move that much too. You saw what the Knicks playoff line did, right? Like they went from plus 150 to like plus 115. Like that's like a 7% change.
Fair enough.
Right,
so I think the market is accounting for it similarly.
Got it. All right. So you said what the Phoenix odds should be. What if the Clips win tonight? What are you looking for Clippers odds and or Sacramento odds?
Right. Okay. So if the Clippers win, I think the Warriors are like 15% right now in my mind. Either way, Sacramento probably bumps up to like 10% if maybe 8 or 9% if the Clippers win.
So plus 1,000 is not a bet at 8 or 9.
It's not really a bet. I mean, it's 1,200 here. It's a marginal bet. Like, I guess I'm a little biased here because I have the other teams that are not Sacramento already. So it's for me, it's more of a hedge, like a neutral bet as a hedge.
Yeah.
It's not very exciting even here. But if we got an update that Curry were out longer, then then there's more reason. So keeping an eye on them, like they're right on the fringe of probably positive EV bet. And I think they just barely eclipsed that threshold.
I like the Clippers of all these options the most.
Yeah, if the Clippers win tonight, so if the Clippers win, maybe the Kings are like 7%, the Warriors are like 15, and the Suns are like 50, and the Clippers are, if my math is right, 28. Those are obviously numbers that I just pulled off the top of my head, but I think those as an estimate, I think that's pretty close. So at plus 500, 28% is really good. Like the break even there is plus 270, right? Something like that. And there were already books that had like Caesars has the Clippers at like plus 360 already. Like 500 is a bit too high to begin with. Okay, and it's unfortunate because last week we were recommending betting the Clippers to make the play-in tournament, which at the time, I was doing that too. And the Clippers could still make the play-in tournament, but they also could still win the division because the Pacific Division looked like by far the strongest division in the NBA for a while. What happened to Lockie? Did we lose him?
And then there were two. I don't know what happened.
We'll go just us for now. Maybe he'll come back.
I'm sure he'll rejoin here in a second.
Okay, so yeah, the Pacific Division looked like the strongest one in the NBA for like quite some time, and now we've had injuries to Booker and Paul. Now we have an injury to Curry, and now the division as a whole is kind of just coming back down to earth. And we've seen the Southwest Division with New Orleans and Memphis and Dallas look a lot better. So The Clippers could make the playoffs. They can make the play-in or win the division. Like I think both are still on the table.
Got it. Okay. As we've talked about on the show, if you do have access to Bet Rivers, you can usually get those odds in. They're usually the last one to take things down after games, so you can even get it in after the game. Right now, Clippers are plus 550 on Bet Rivers. So if you have access there, where you're already saying plus 500 is probably too high to start. It's starting at plus 550 on Bet Rivers. So again, guys, if you're watching that game, the Clippers do pull it out, if you can nab Clippers at plus 550, if they win tonight,
Right.
that's a good futures bet to get down.
And because of the way these books operate, like you're mentioning, you do not have to bet on this before the game. Like that line at Bet Rivers, like I would bet a lot of money that line will not change until tomorrow morning, or it could happen at like 3 a.m. Whatever. It's going to happen overnight.
Well, let's take a real world example. So yesterday on the show,
yep,
our recommendation was if the Knicks win, to get a bet in for at plus odds for them to make the playoffs.
Yeah,
and I think it was plus 135 on DraftKings. It was plus 152 on Bet Rivers. At 2 a.m. last night, you could still get plus 152 on Bet Rivers. And this morning, it's down to like plus 115.
Yeah.
So if you're up watching the game, if you're up late after the game, these things are still available, at least on that site. But if you wait till morning, that's when the updates are done. So again, actionable step tonight. If Clippers win, grab them at plus 500, plus 550. Both are good bets. It sounds like Kings probably not a good bet unless you're seeing. Well, the plus 1200 might be. But like,
does Bet Rivers have a higher number for the Kings? I thought I saw 1400.
Plus
which
1,000.
okay,
I just checked. It's plus 1,000. So that's a stay away.
Yeah.
All right. So one last quick thing on that game last night. I had a conversation with somebody who was bemoaning, excuse me, the loss they had on the game because they had bet Golden State money line.
Yep.
And it was completely it was kind of to me just a public way of betting, which is Golden State versus Indianapolis, and Golden State seems better betting the money line. And they said it even seemed fishy because it was minus 120. And I had a friendly conversation saying that the value there was actually on Indianapolis. I mean, you got to take into account that Golden State was on the second night of a back-to-back. There was some likelihood that some of those big guys weren't, some of the better players weren't playing. Again, if you're watching this show, we're going to tell you where the value is. A lot of times it's opposite of what the general thinking is. So it's not that we set out to be contrarians. We're using the ratings. We're looking at history of what's happened with injuries. We understand the impact of back-to-backs. We think a little better than the market. So that game last night, I know we kind of glossed over it at the start, but just being on the Indianapolis side, it was a good bet. And as we identified in yesterday's show, if things broke a little bit differently, it had the potential to be a great bet. But it was a good bet. It was a win. So we'll take the wins any way we get them. Anything else from yesterday?
One more thing to say on that game, because this is like the example you just gave is great. Like, this is a really good thing to illustrate why we have an edge over the market, and partly why we have an edge just over people. People don't look at the micro level anything really. Like, they're all at the macro level. So the Warriors didn't have Klay Thompson last night. They didn't have Andrew Wiggins, who is their third best player. And if you watched the NBA Finals last year, there were people talking about him deserving Finals MVP. Like, he was amazing in the Finals. Steph was better, but Wiggins was really, really good in the Finals.
And in that last game, if Steph didn't have the strong game he had in the last game, that was going to be Wiggins MVP. It was going to be tough because there was so much sentiment to give one to Curry, because so many of the Curry haters just use that against him, that he's never had a Finals MVP. But you're right. He was clearly the second best player.
Yeah.
Possibly the first. But anyway, so Wiggins was already out.
Right. Like, these people ignore the players to a massive degree. So, like, you have these people that are looking at trends and, like, this team is this coming off a loss because the Warriors had lost the previous game. They're, like, going to have a bounce back. And, like, this is not any different than looking at the roulette wheel and thinking that red has come up a bunch and now it's going to be black. Like, it's like 1% different than that. There's a human element, but it makes up such a small portion of what we care about. So it's way more important that the Warriors had to fly from Milwaukee. We did establish they do get on a plane from Milwaukee to Indiana. They're tired even though the starters didn't play their full minutes the prior night, still had to fly. Then Klay is out. Wiggins is already out. And the Warriors just aren't that great of a team when they're missing those guys. So you have a tired version of a worse version of the Warriors playing an average Pacers team on their home floor. And if you don't account for all of that, you're just not going to do well.
Right. Yeah. So anyway, that's where, again, you'll get some surprises. And we try to even identify surprises. Was yesterday or the day before when we had New Orleans. I'm sorry, we had the first Jazz New Orleans game, and we were showing Jazz as the value, and same, on its face, it's just like, hey, the Pelicans are, in running for the best record in the West, and the Jazz are the Jazz. Well, guess what? Jazz had the value. We recommended the Jazz bet, and that one was a winner.
Right.
All right. Anything on the Knicks game? That was an annoying game as well. That looked like we had it. We at +4 we were set. Even when there was a shot for them to lose it at the end of regulation. It's like, okay, that's fine. Even if the team hits a 2 or a 3, we're good. But then we had to get into overtime, but then pulled it out in overtime.
Yep.
I didn't get to watch too much of that game.
Me either.
I did at 2 different points. I just happened to look up and see our second favorite guy in NBA history, Emmanuel Quickly, making good plays. So, any other insights on that game last night?
No, I'm just really happy with how it went. Like the result. Like the sequence you described sounds horrible. So I'm happy I didn't watch it. But we got Brunson in, and the line closed at like 3.5, and we had it at 4. Like that was good. The Knicks for the playoffs, that was really good. And yeah, like the Bulls are just overrated, and the Knicks are underrated in general. And we like really needed that game because a lot of other games we like didn't go well. But that one was like our biggest win. And then for future betting purposes, like even at +115 right now, I still like the Knicks. Like they're well above 50% right now, I think, to make the playoffs. I think we could even place it at 30 to 40% that they eclipse the play-in tournament entirely. Like there's enough probability they don't even have to be in the play-in tournament. So
yeah. Yeah, the East is tough. I mean, it just because things are so bunched up. I'm just looking now.
Well, there's 3 clear. I actually think right now there's 5 teams that are separating themselves. Unfortunately, one of them is the Brooklyn Nets, which is going to hurt for the Nets play-in bets that we have liked throughout the year. I have that one as high as like +700. It's not going to win.
No,
I don't think it's going to win.
I hear you. I'm looking at the standings. So Celtics, Bucks, Cavs, Nets, Sixers. I assume those are the 5 teams you're saying are separating themselves.
And the Knicks could be the next team in.
I was going to say the Knicks are only 1 game behind the Sixers in the loss column. Pacers are only 2 games behind that. Heat are 3 games, and the Hawks and the Raptors, and the Bulls are only 1 more behind that. And I know the Bulls haven't looked good lately, but I did see a report that Lonzo might be coming back soon. So
no. It's the opposite report. We got an update from Woj yesterday that they're not sure if he's going to play this year.
All right, I saw Lonzo news. I thought it was him coming in.
Wrong direction. He's going backwards.
Got it. All right, so then pass for the draft. But even with that, I mean, that's the 11 seed right now. If the season ended today, they're number 11 with 11 and 16, but they are only 3 games in the loss column behind the Knicks. There's a lot of teams.
Right, they're just the Bulls are just the Bulls are just not good is the thing there. But like for the Knicks, I think it's very likely they finish the regular season as an 8 seed or better. So if they're in the top 6, they're just in the playoffs. Like they don't have to deal with the play-in. If they're the 7 or 8, they have 2 cracks at winning 1 game to get in the playoffs. And that's a well above 50% chance of them doing that too. Like even if they were slight underdogs in both games, which may or may not be true, we don't know what the teams are going to look like at the end of the year. They're still more likely than not going to be able to win 1 of the 2 games, even if they're a slight underdog.
No, I'm agreeing. I said I jumped on that one at +152 last night for Knicks to make the playoffs. I certainly would love to see them finish in the 6th seed, so you don't even have to worry about the lottery or the crapshoot that is the play-in. But yeah, good.
So okay, one more thing I just realized though: the Knicks are playing in Chicago again tomorrow night.
Okay.
So another win, more of the same. Like. If they lose, I'll probably wait and try to bet them to make the playoffs at a bigger number later. But if the Knicks win again tomorrow night,
what do you think their odds are going to go to? They were -140.
I thought they should be -110 this morning, if not better, and they're not. Okay. They're still +115. The line probably won't change until after their next game, and yeah, if they win the next game, like the line probably will go to -130 or 40, and at that point, maybe it should be like -200 or higher.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we are getting close to closeout time here. Any last comments on anything of note from yesterday, or are we?
No. I'm just keeping an eye out for tomorrow because I don't actually think we have any. We don't have any upcoming back-to-backs. This is like the first. This is the first day where we don't have like here's what we're betting tomorrow. Now, we get a bit of a break there. So. Yeah, keep an eye on Phoenix. We like Utah no matter what. And then we're keeping an eye on Miami, but most likely we're not going to have anything. So it's really that Suns game, and anyone can rewind and see what we said about the total for that game. Interesting situation, but yeah, I think that's mostly it.
Gotcha. All right. Thanks very much. So again, if you joined late, Matt, if you could jump back to the value tab, we'll just show that New Orleans versus Jazz game jumping out. We are recommending a bet on the Jazz if you can get that at
what
the
a shock.
1.5. Yeah.
Always Utah.
Yep. 3.5 points of value there. So that one's a nice opportunity. The Miami game, we're keeping an eye on things depending on who's in or out. Phoenix game had one of the 14 if-then statement variables with possible bets there on the over. So keep an eye on the Preaching Sense Twitter account. Matt will try to update us as we whittle down all the if-thens to hopefully just a couple actuals. And we will be back tomorrow, 10 a.m., hopefully to talk about the wins for tonight and talk about new value to tomorrow. And hopefully we will have a Lockie sighting and he will rejoin us for tomorrow's show. See you guys.